Here's your tea, my dear.
So, this is Blythe, my friend who writes like me, which is very rare because I actually don't have that many friends who are writers. We end up having like these weird writers tangents and chats.
Lots of tangents.
So often. We thought it would be kind of cool if like we just happened to turn the camera on during one of our conversations. Basically, you guys get to just watch our conversation, but it'll feel like a nice little slumber party for us readers and writers. And so,
Get some tea.
grab yourself a cup of tea, or
Put
some
milk in your
coffee,
tea.
put milk in your tea, put milk and sugar in your tea and coffee.
You don't have to put sugar.
No, you have to put sugar.
No, you don't have to
You
put
should
sugar.
always put sugar.
Don't. And you can drink your
Because
coffee black.
You should see how much sugar I put in
I don't want to know.
Here we go again on our tangents.
How do you write? What's your process?
How do we write?
You first. How do you write? What's your process?
Okay. Process of writing. How do I write? I'm definitely the sort of writer that the more I outline things, the less inspired I am to write it. So I do better just kind of like honestly plunging myself blindly into something and just writing. The initial inspiration that I have for a story almost always occurs with an image in my head, a scene, like just a random scene, and then the scene is what leads to the rest of the story. That's how all of my stories have begun. I become very attached to this scene and these characters that were just playing in my head, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to make this into a story. But that's where it becomes difficult for me because sometimes it's really hard for me to think past this one scene that I'm very attached to writing.
Yeah, because I always have the scenes and then I don't write the story because all I have is the scene.
Like I know the characters, I know the scene, I know the context of what they're doing, but then you have to get into the rest of the like the nitty-gritty of your story. Have like the foundation of this great scene, and then once I start outlining the rest of it, the little details, then I become less inspired to write it.
Interesting.
Because I'm a perfectionist, especially as it relates to my writing, if I try to outline my writing, then it won't happen, because then I go into the perfectionist part of my mind that's like, oh, it can't be this way, it can't be that way, it has to be this way. And so the only way that I can write is to just
spit it out before you stop it.
To just do it and just like let it all flow out. That's the only way I can do it. Do you feel like you have a concrete process of writing? Like, do you outline things? You write poetry. I more write stories, so it's harder to compare.
And I can't hold a plot line. I have struggle with plot. It always turns into a poem.
So you just sit
No
down.
outlining.
You just sit down on paper and you just write. Well, also I feel like when it comes to poetry, that's just the best way to do it. You can't, I mean, do people outline poetry?
I'm sure if you're doing a long ballad type
poem, like if you do like a sestina, then you outline a sestina somewhat, right?
I don't. Sestinas for me are fun because you start with the words.
Yeah.
Because I love doing that. I've never even thought about whether to outline because I just spit it out. And then I have to edit a lot.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to like collage different scenes together into one story? You have one scene and then you have another scene, and then the challenge is to make them both fit the same story. With poems, I'll have like something that fits one poem and something that fits another, and they're both only one poem, but they're not enough to be a poem. So then I try to put them together, and the challenge is making it flow into one poem.
The process of story writing and the process of poetry is so different.
Well, what's your poetry process?
I write poetry when I'm experiencing the most extremes of my emotions. I'm putting my feelings onto paper, but I'm putting it in sort of a code in a different language that nobody would be able to actually decipher. But the feeling, the emotion of what I'm saying is still there.
That's why I started writing poems, because I wanted to say things, but I wanted to write in code because I was in high school. Middle school.
Exactly.
Very young. And I didn't want people to know what I felt.
But you still want to talk about it. So,
the code wasn't that good, looking back. I read some of those in front of everyone, and
yeah, we had creative writing readings at our school. Every single person in the high school, whether or not you were a writer, had to get up and read their writing.
The thing about a small school is everyone knew your entire life story. So they had both the metaphors and the story to tie the metaphors to. And that's what made the code so not
decipherable. When you go to a school that has like 60 people total in it, everybody knows everything about you. Yeah, the code of poetry doesn't work because people will know what you're talking about no matter how pretty you make it sound.
Also, once I started actually writing poetry, I decided to not write in code because I realized that the purpose of writing is to communicate things, and writing in code is doing the opposite of that. So I tried to like sit down and be like bluntly, weirdly honest in my poems. I think now I have like a balance of images that mean something to me that could mean something to someone else. So you're giving people a chance to see what they want to see.
As a writer who doesn't write stories but you write poetry, do you have scenes and stuff?
Sometimes when I'm driving, I start watching my own movies in my head.
Yeah, me too. Okay, this was something that we wanted to talk about, is driving as a writer is a very interesting experience.
And quite dangerous for me.
And dangerous. It's when I'm driving that I have the most inspiration for things. I'll be driving somewhere and all of a sudden I'll have this amazing, brilliant inspiration for a story pop into my head.
And then if you write it down, you're breaking the law. Have you ever pulled over to write something down before?
No, have you? You pulled over to write poetry?
And I've also, like, at traffic lights,
I've written stuff with Siri.
Well, I try that, but she never knows what I'm saying. I have an idea.
What?
Writing a nonsense poem with Siri is the other author, because you tell Siri what to write, but she always changes her mind about what you should write.
If you guys don't know what a nonsense poem is, how do you describe a nonsense poem?
Well, like the Jabberwocky is a nonsense poem.
How I would describe nonsense poetry in a nutshell, a whimsical feeling to it, it's as if you're writing poetry in the world of Alice in Wonderland or something, kind of fairy tale children's book sort of feeling.
And it's like you're speaking your own language that's in your head. When I'm talking, I trip over my words a lot and I like get distracted sometimes, but really it's mostly like I forget words and I trip over them. And with nonsense poems, it's this freedom where I don't trip over words, I just say whatever word comes to mind first to describe whatever I'm thinking. And because I'm not conscious of trying to make sense, because it's nonsense,
it comes out more authentically because you're not trying to make sense of what you're writing about.
Because when you try to make sense, you lose what you meant.
That's like what I've always loved the most about writing versus talking, is that when you have a conversation with somebody, a lot of things get lost in translation. That's why I've always believed that sometimes if you're trying to convey something to someone, reading somebody else's writing or showing somebody your writing, it shows the true essence of what somebody is trying to say.
Language kind of, I think limits us sometimes.
I feel like that might be why both of us started writing and were drawn to writing as when we were younger, because I think we were both kind of quiet people, and we've definitely gotten past that as we've gotten older, but Blythe and I had the same issue of being the quiet girls in the group that everybody kind of pegged as being a certain kind of person.
We were nice, we were sweet.
We were nice, we were sweet, we were shy, we were innocent. And like, whatever, maybe that's true. Maybe we are those things, but I think that was always very frustrating for us because we had a hard time speaking up. So I think we turned to writing as a way of expressing the parts of ourselves that we like that other people could not see.
Well, we would like say silly things that people would kind of laugh at.
Yeah.
But it's the type of thing that in I actually literally have a nonsense poem that starts out with a sentence that I said in real life. I turned to my friends and I was thinking about emotions and what I was feeling, and I said, guys, I think I figured out how to jump the universes. Nonsense poem, it fit the language, but in normal like conversational life it was a little out of place.
Well, if Blythe turned to me and said, I think I figured out how to jump the universe,
she would say, oh my god, how?
We use metaphors to explain things that we otherwise would have a difficult time explaining to each other. What are some weird writer's quirks that we have?
I edit song lyrics.
What?
Play a song and sometimes I can't hear all the lyrics, and I have hearing loss in my right ear, and so I will write down what I think I hear or what I think kind of fits, and often it's really not what was originally there, and so it helps me prompt poems.
I know like a lot of writers have playlists to listen to when they're writing. I can't do that.
I do it if I'm intentionally basing it off of a song, but I can't do it if I'm not.
I can't write or do anything while listening to music because then I just end up listening to the music. The only thing is, like, sometimes I'll hear a song, like if I hear the Game of Thrones soundtrack, then I'll be like, oh my god, I just want to go and write like a super intense fantasy story. But I don't want to listen to it while I'm writing. I've never talked to anybody about this before, and I have no idea if other people do it or if it's just me. I, like, narrate in my head what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I don't do it third person. Mine's first person sometimes.
I do it third person. Not like I don't use my name, like Sophie like walked to her car. Like that's not that's not what I do. I'll like narrate things in my head, like she like walked down the road and slung her bag over her shoulder and looked to her left at the looming fog across the hills. I would be doing that action, but in my head, narrating when I'm doing it and making it sound very dramatic. Is that normal?
I don't know if it's normal, but yes, I agree.
I almost view writing as like elaborating upon life.
Or capturing the magic.
Building upon what is normal and trying to capture the magic that we see.
Well,
that we imagine.
It's finding magic in the normalcy of life. We look for stories in life, and so then everything we get to notice is a story.
Her poetry though is so beautiful, you guys, and you have to go and check it out because she just writes the most like beautiful poetry. It's my favorite poetry ever. I'm obsessed with it. You have to go and read it. She was obsessed with the balance between the logic and emotion, and a lot of people
I'm a Libra.
I'm a Libra too. We're both Libras.
The reason, like, dream sense is, like, what I call my poetry is because I'm, for some reason, obsessed with logic and emotion, and I'm always thinking about that, therefore half my poems are...
My cat just walked in the room. Griffin! Griffin, come here! Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing.
I thought you were supposed to look at the camera. I thought that was like a no-no. Rupert Grint says something like, oops, I just looked at the camera.
Well, Blythe, that's when you're in a movie. Imagine that the camera's just kind of a third person in the conversation.
He's not saying much.
You're assuming that my camera's a male?
His name starts with a C.
That's because you're looking at Canon.
Oh, camera! Canon, yeah.
Showing our true selves.
You're gonna hit me.
Think about being friends
Ow! You keep hitting me!
Why are you so sensitive? Why is your body so
I'm a
sensitive?
writer!
Go away, fly! Kill you.
That's not very magical.
Where is it?
I don't want to tell you.
Go away! Go away!
What were you saying about tangents?
Go! I think I scared it.
Okay, good. Stop.
Can flies get scared? Was
I don't know how to respond to that.
Whoa.
Where you would ever be nice. Mediums, but it was the same.
Sorry,
I'm competing with a fly right now.
I just want.
You don't know him.
I know him well enough to know that he should not be in my room right now.
Yeah.
What were you about to say? Were you about to say give him a chance?
Yes, and then you said that. It was just a completely different context.
It's a fly. And can you stop making that sound? Thanks.
Oh, magic.
Oh.
We have to talk about how we
magic.
met.
You know,
Don't stop.
Never believe it's not then we'll be okay.
There's more bloopers than there are actual footage.
I feel like that describes our life. More bloopers than actual footage. I love you.
I love you too.
I love you so much.